if somebody can read it, if somebody can read it out for me, for all of us, that'll be great help if that's possible.
In the course of time, the king of the Ammonites died, and his sons Hanun succeeded him as king. David thought, I will show kindness to Hanun, son of Nahash, just as his father showed kindness to me. So David sent a delegation to express his sympathy to Hanun concerning his father. When David's men came to the land of the Ammonites, the Ammonite commanders said to Hanun their lord, do you think David is honoring your father by sending envoys to you to express sympathy? Hasn't David sent them to you only to explore the city and spy it out and overthrow it? So Hanun seized David's envoys, shaved off half of each man's beard, cut off their garments at the buttocks, and sent them away. Next slide. When David was told about this, he sent messengers to meet the men, for they were greatly humiliated. The king said, stay at Jericho till your beards have grown and then come back. When the Ammonites realized that they had become obnoxious to David, they hired 20,000 Aramean foot soldiers from Beth Rehob and Zobah, as well as the king of Makkah with 1,000 men, and also 12,000 men from Tob. On hearing this, David sent Joab out with the entire army of fighting men. The Ammonites came out and drew up in battle's formation at the entrance of their city gate, while the Arameans of Zobah and Rehob and the men of Tob and Makkah were by themselves in the open country. Joab saw that there were battle lines in front of him and behind him. So he selected some of the best troops in Israel and deployed them against the Arameans. He put the rest of the men under the command of Abishai, his brother, and deployed them against the Ammonites. Joab said, if the Arameans are too strong for me, then you are to come to my rescue. But if the Ammonites are too strong for you, then I will come to rescue you. Be strong and let us fight bravely for our people and the cities of our God. The Lord will do what is good in his sight. Then Joab and the troops which with him advanced to fight the Arameans, and they fled before him. When the Ammonites realized that the Arameans were fleeing, they fled before Abishai and went inside the city. So Joab returned from fighting the Ammonites and came to Jerusalem. After the Arameans saw that they had been routed by Israel, they regrouped. Hadadezer had Arameans brought from beyond the Euphrates River. They went to Helam with Shobak, the commander of Hadadezer's army, leading them. When David was told of this, he gathered all Israel, crossed the Jordan, and went to Helam. The Arameans formed their battle lines to meet David and fought against him. But they fled before Israel, and David killed 700 of their charioteers and 40,000 of their foot soldiers. He also struck down Shobak, the commander of their army, and he died there. When all the kings who were vassals of Hadadezer saw that they had been routed by Israel, they made peace with the Israelites and became subject to them. So the Arameans were afraid to help the Ammonites anymore.
Thank you so much. I don't know who read it, but it was good reading with so much of clarity. So thank you so much. And so I'll give a synopsis of the story because when we read long passages, the tendency is that we lose the track of or the trail of incidents, or we lose our concentration. So here the synopsis is David comes to know that a king in the adjoining or the neighboring nation, that is Ammonites, king has died and the prince has become the new king. So he sends his envoys to console the new king, and he's doing an act of kindness. But when these envoys reach this nation, the new king has some princes who kind of mislead him, and they give him some wrong, suspecting that they're spies. They nab hold of them, they strip them from behind, expose their buttocks, and shave their beard half, and send them with humiliation back. And David learns about this, and David comes and meets, sends messengers to these people, asking these men to recoup at Jericho and stay there till the beards grow back and then go back home. Now the Ammonites, realizing that they have provoked David, and they were expecting that David would attack back, so they prepared in advance for war, and they hired some men, some army foot soldiers from the Arameans. The Arameans apparently are the Syrian army, which is a stronger army, and so they hire them, and then they line up in front of Jerusalem and behind the countryside. And so David asks Joab, the chief commander, to take control of things. And Joab divides the troop into two. One he leads by himself, and one his brother leads. And he makes a covenant with his brother that I will lead the stronger part of the army, that is the Arameans, and you face the Ammonites. And suppose you fall weak, I'll come to help you. And if I fall weak, you will come to help me. And when Joab approaches with his soldiers near to the Arameans fled the scene. And subsequently, when the Ammonites come to know that the Arameans have fled the scene, they also flee. Now, the Ammonites are okay with it, but the Arameans, being a stronger army, it hurt their ego, so they regroup again and they attack Israel again with a strong commander in charge. And now this time David leads the battle and he defeats the Arameans. He kills their commander. He kills 50,000 odd soldiers, and then the Arameans enter into a peace treaty with Israel, never to attack Israel, and become subject to Israel, and never to help the Ammonites. So this is the story, and the sermon which I want to draw out of this passage is titled as "Have We Missed It?" So the next slide, have we missed it? Yeah, so this is a scene which we don't like much as Indians. We don't want any catch to be missed. As we see in the story that the Ammonites missed the kindness which David was extending towards them, and they returned it back with hostility and humiliation. There are times in our lives when we miss certain vital aspects of the kingdom in our life. So as during the course of my discourse, we will pause at certain places and reflect back whether we have missed certain things. So the first point the first lesson which we draw out from this passage is that we are made for good works. So next slide, we are created for good works. Now we see David in the earlier passage, which you might have seen in the last week, that David was looking for some relative of King Saul, to show kindness for the sake of Jonathan. Jonathan was King Saul's son and David's good friend. And so he finds Mephibosheth, who is Jonathan's son, lame from both legs. And so he gives him that privilege to be in the royal palace, live in the royal palace, and dine with the king at the royal dining table. And now, if we see typically or historically or traditionally, when a new king comes to the throne, he virtually wipes out every member of the earlier royal lineage in order to avoid any coup or any ploy against him. But here, David, breaking all traditions, is showing kindness to the former royal lineage, and he's allowing Mephibosheth to stay in the royal palace along with him. He makes him a family member. And here again in this story, we see David learns that the neighboring king has died, and so he's sending an envoy to console the new king. So here again, it is mentioned that he is into an act of kindness. Now we don't know, although it is mentioned in the passage that Nahash had done some good to David, but it is not mentioned in Bible anywhere what good had he done. But what we learn of Nahash is not so pleasant about him, because he's seen as a cruel king. The account we read about him is in 1 Samuel chapter 11, where he besieged the city of Jabez Gilead, and the men of the city, they plead before him that we will become subject to you and you sign a treaty with us. But this king says, I will make you subject on one condition, that I will gouge out your right eye. So that cruel he was. And there Saul comes to battle with him, and that was Saul's first battle as a king. and he defeats Nahash. So that is Nahash's background we know. But the scholars say that because Nahash had an enmity with King Saul, so maybe when David was running away from Saul, he was an exile or a fugitive. I think, or we feel Nahash might have offered a refuge in his own land. That is the good, that is the kindness which David is remembering. Nevertheless, David is in a doing good spree in the last chapter and this chapter. And God has created us for good works. That is what is written in Ephesians 2:10, that we are God's workmanship created in Christ Jesus for good works, which is prepared beforehand for us. So the identity which we should carry is that we are made for good works, or we should be identified for our good works. We should be known by our good works. We should be remembered for our good works. Now, can we go to the next part on the slide? Yeah. So good works can happen only when we go out of a normal routine. So I put two boxes here. When we go out of a normal routine, that is going out of your normal routine, a conscious and a deliberate move, and something that costs. You can't involve yourself into acts of kindness when you're going into the normal affairs of your life. You have to go out of it. And a good example of it is the Good Samaritan story. When we see the Good Samaritan story, this man is beaten up, looted, and is left on the roadside to bleed to death. And there is a priest who goes that way. There's a Levite who goes that way. But they turn a blind eye to this man. They're so busy with they are the spiritual leaders. They are the teachers of the law. But they don't bother about this man because they are so busy with their normal routine that they go ahead. And there is a man who's called the Samaritan. In the societal norms, he's considered an outcast, but he goes out of his normal routine. He pays attention to this man. This bleeding man is actually considered to be his enemy, but he goes to him, nurses him, takes him to an inn, stays with him, looks after him. The next day, he asks the innkeeper to keep him for a few days so that he gets better. And then he promises that he'll come back and reimburse the bills. That is good work. Good work will not come to your mind when you are going on with your normal routine. So you have to come out of your normal routine to think. It is a thought process, consciously thought and done. Now, in both the passages, in the last week's passage and today's passage, we see David breaking all tradition. No king would do that, but he's going out of his normal routine and thinking about somebody to make him feel special and do something good for that person. Now, there was a pastor who was visiting an old uncle, and this uncle was staying alone. So when he visits the home, he's sitting at the dining table conversing with the uncle, and on the dining table there was a bowl of almonds kept. So as he was talking to the uncle, he took an almond from the bowl and he popped it into his mouth, and he starts munching it. He finds it very delicious. So he has few of them, and then he realizes that he has not asked uncle's permission. So he says, "Sorry, uncle, I'm finding this almonds very delicious. So can I have it?" So uncle said, "No, this is kept for you. You can have all of it." So he finishes the bowl, and when he was leaving, he was being very grateful and thankful to uncle, saying, "Uncle, these are so nourishing. And I think you soaked it in water. It was moist, and so it was very tasty to eat." So the uncle says, "No, you don't have to be thankful about these almonds, because I stay alone, and my children are abroad, and I like these almond chocolates. So they send me these almond chocolates. But the problem with me is I don't have teeth. So I can only chew the chocolate out of it, and then I leave the almonds thinking that it will come to use for somebody. And so here you come and you finish it off." And when this man listens to this story, now he is understanding why these almonds are moist. And he's just waiting to come out of that house and puke his belly out. Now this is definitely not an act of kindness. it though looks like an act of kindness, but it does not come or emerge out of your normal course of affairs. It has to have, it does not come out of your leftovers. Sometimes we think of giving our leftovers to somebody. Sometimes we think of giving our used clothes to somebody, and we think we are involving ourselves in some good works. It is not that. So can we just pause here and reflect on ourselves? Are we missing out on being good to people? So the next slide. Have we missed out on doing good? So now, reflecting on what David did in both the passages, the last week's passage and this passage, David is thinking and remembering of some people who stood with him, who cared for him, who loved him, who helped him in his difficult times. And there will be many in our life who have helped us, stood with us, or been of help to us. Have we missed out on them? So can we take a minute or two and just remember some people who were very important to us, who really helped us, and can we make a small prayer of blessing for them? That just doing what David did. Okay, so can we just pause for a second and think of some people who really came alongside and helped us and stood with us when we needed them most, and pray a prayer of blessing on them. Some names will just come in your mind. Bless them. Just doing what David did. Pray a prayer of blessing on each one of them. Amen. Maybe during the course of this week, we can send a thank you note to them or extend some kindness to them. Okay, the next question on this aspect, have we missed out on somebody, a beggar or a downtrodden or a poor person on our way to the station? Every day we take the same route to our office, and there is a person sitting on the roadside, and we turn a blind eye to them. Have we missed out on them? They're precious to God. Like the priest and the Levite, they missed out on that person. Sometimes we might be doing that. And even if we give a look to that person, we do a worth analysis of that person. No, let me tell you what is a worth analysis. Worth analysis is we look at that person and we do the research of his body, whether he has proper hands, proper legs, his eyes are proper. Then why is he begging? And should I give him? Is he worthy of my alms? Should I give him my money? If I give him, I will be encouraging him to beg more. Or is he going to use my money judiciously? These are the questions which come into our mind, and we turn them off. Bible says, if anybody asks you, give them. Don't judge them. If somebody pulls your shirt off, give them your coat. Somebody asks you to go a mile, go 2 miles with them. That's what God asks. And Jesus encourages us, what you do to the least of this, you're doing it to me. And I think that is enough for us, not to judge them and do some. And it requires to go out of your normal routine and give attention to that person and do something for that person. The next question to pause and reflect is, have we missed out on our own family? Sometimes we could be kind to the whole world and miss out on our spouse and our children. A man had the habit of forgetting his wife's birthday. So every birthday he would forget his wife's birthday, and the wife would be very angry with this man. So one birthday, a day before the birthday, he remembered that it is his wife's birthday. So he wanted to make her feel special. So he goes to the flower shop, books a flower bouquet, pays the money, gives the address, and tells the man that without fail, deliver this bouquet tomorrow to my home. But when tomorrow comes, when the birthday comes, lo and behold, he forgets that it's wife's birthday. So he gets on with the normal course of his work, his routine. He goes for work. When he leaves for work, the bouquet arrives. And the wife is so happy that my husband made me feel special. So she was waiting for his call, but he had forgotten. So there was no call from him. When the husband arrives back in the evening, she was so happy. She said, darling, thank you for this bouquet. So this man is completely confused. He's out of his mind. He doesn't know what has happened. And he's asking, which bouquet? Who sent these flowers? And she says, you forgot birthday. He said, whose birthday? And there the war begins. Have we missed out on our family? And again, I'm saying, even if it is to make your wife special or your husband special, it has to come out of it. You have to come out of a normal routine and think of somebody. Think of a person whom you want to make that person feel special. And then the good work will come out of it, as it came out of David. The next point which we learn from this passage is, the next slide, misunderstanding kindness. Now we are prone to misunderstand and being misunderstood. Everybody, we all go through this. We judge the book by the cover. There was a girl who was returning from a Christmas party around 11:30 in the night. She was driving a car, and very soon she finds a truck was following her. So she gets scared. And over that, this man was throwing or flashing the beam light on the car. So she gets all the more scared. So she has a look at this man from the rear view mirror, and she finds this man, the driver, hefty and has a big mustache. She gets very scared. And so just to clear a suspicion, she takes a right turn to see whether this man is following her. And she finds he's following her. And so now she is scared to death. She finds a place where she stops a car and runs out of a car to save her life. And there this man, the truck comes behind the car. The man stops the truck and he jumps out of the truck. And she was thinking that he will run behind her. But to her surprise, he doesn't run behind her, but he runs to the car. He opens the back door and pulls a man out from the back seat. And this man had a knife in his hand. He thrashes the man to the ground, snatches this knife away, and calls out to this girl. And this girl then looks back and sees that she has missed some truth. And so there she comes, and this man says, ma'am, when I was behind your car, I saw this man in your back seat, and he was trying to attack you. And so I was beeping the light on your car so that he doesn't get an opportunity to attack you. I was following you to save you, but I think you misjudged me. And she felt very sorry about her state of mind. And she said sorry to this man. Many a times we look at people with tainted glass. We misunderstand people. We assume that, there are times when people say, oh, I thought you were ignoring me. I thought you were avoiding me. That is just a thought. That could be a misunderstanding. And we look at the speck at the people, at the other person. We miss the plank in our own eyes. We paint everybody with the same brush. And it could be happening because of our prejudices, our predilection, or our preposition, or our assumptions, or our presumptions, or it could be happening because of our friend circle or our advisors. We get misled. Bible says in 1 Corinthians 15:33, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. Why did this king misjudge David's voice? Because this prince, his own advisory, his own counselors, they misled him. And it could happen to us. People are contagious. You always catch with what others have, and you are as good as the people with whom you associate. If the people with whom you associate are prejudiced or biased, you will be prejudiced and biased. If the people with whom you associate, they are gossipers, you will end up gossiping. If they are demotivated, you will be demotivated. There was a man who finds a pigeon on the roadside. The pigeon was dying, so he feels compassionate towards the pigeon. He brings the pigeon home, nurses the pigeon, and the pigeon comes back to life, and he keeps it as his dearest pet. and he keeps the pigeon in his backyard. One day when he comes back from work, he finds the crows in the backyard, and crows are very nasty. They dirty the place, they create havoc, they were destroying the plant. So he was worried, how are these crows coming into my backyard? They were not coming so long. And so then the second day he finds the crows again. So then he asked the pigeon, why are these crows coming here? So the pigeon gives a very innocent look, trying to suggest that I don't know why they're coming. The third day again he finds these crows here. The fourth day he decides, if I find the crows today, I'm going to shoot them. So when he returns from work, he takes a gun and shoots the crows. And there are some crows on a shot dead on the ground, and the others fly off. When he has a look at the crows, which were dead, to his utter shock and his surprise and for his sorrow, he finds that his dearest pigeon amongst those dead crows. And he lifts the pigeon, and then he understands the story that these crows were coming because the pigeon had befriended them. The pigeon had become friendly to them. Sometimes we pay a huge cost for the friends we have, for the counselors we have, for the advisor. God has given us godly counsel in the church in the form of leaders and pastors, but we don't listen to them because that doesn't suit our taste. They don't say what our ears are itching to hear, and so we are misled. And by the way, misunderstanding creates huge devastations and havoc and huge damage, and that's what happening today in marriages. Marriages are falling apart, divorces, separation, families are disintegrating, churches are splitting for just one misunderstanding. Here the Ammonites had a chance to repent. Instead of offering repentance, they offered resistance. Once sorry, anyway, David was not going to retaliate. David sent Joab to take stock of things. If he would have gone, he would have completely wiped out the Ammonites. But the Ammonites could have rectified things. They could have just said a sorry, and things could have improved, in our relationships. So I'm coming on to the next point. The question we should ponder: the next slide, have we missed out on forgiveness, on reconciliation, on relationship because of misunderstanding? One small thing which has gone wrong, we can rectify that by just being humble and saying a word of sorry can save relationship. But because of our ego, because of our pride, we stick on with that stiff-necked attitude, and we lose things. The next lesson we learn from this passage is the next slide: brotherhood and sisterhood. Now I'm very interested by the statement which Joab makes. Joab said, if the Arameans are too strong for me, then you are to come to my rescue. But if the Ammonites are too strong for you, then I will come to rescue you. Be strong and let us fight bravely for our people and the cities of our God. The Lord will do what is good in his sight. What a powerful statement. This is brotherhood. This is sisterhood. This is the community for which God has made the church. During the lockdown, we didn't miss worship. Actually, because we could worship at home. We could pray at home. We could hear to thousands of sermons on YouTube. But what we missed was meeting each other, talking to each other, fellowshipping with each other. And that's what is the core of everything. That is the importance of church. We all as church are responsible for each other. We all have strengths and we all need each other. We need to complement each other. It is like a covenant which we make with each other. Where you fall weak, what Joab said, where you fall weak, I'll come to help you. And where I fall weak, you come to help me. Can we make this covenant with each other? And that will make this church strong. And that's why they've won this battle. The enemy, they didn't have to fight the enemies. The enemies fled seeing their unity. That is the power of unity in the church. And we see that in the New Testament church, in the book of Acts, it is written, all the believers were together and had everything in common. And if there was somebody poor among them, the rich would sell their property and help the poor. It was trying to say what Joab said: if you fall weak, I'll come and help you. And when I fall weak, you come and help me. God asked Cain, when Cain murdered Abel, God asked Cain, where is your brother? And Cain answers, I don't know where is Cain, where is Abel. Am I my brother's keeper? You know, Satan wants to put that into our mind, to ask this question: am I my brother's keeper? Am I my sister's keeper? So the next question we should ponder and reflect is on the next slide. Have we missed out on being our brother's keeper? It's so easy to get, be busy with our own life. But God has instituted church that we say to each other, when you are weak, I'll come to help you. And when I'm weak, you will come to help me. And so have we missed out on this aspect? The last aspect, the last lesson which we learn from the story is the next slide. Leaving it in the king's hand. Now I'm so happy that in this passage, David was the king. And David is a very considerate king. He's a very good king. He learns that his people have faced humiliation. They've been ridiculed. They've been put to shame. He comes and meets them and tells them to rest in this place till your beards grow back. He is understanding their pain. He's understanding their humiliation. And he is a precursor to Jesus. David could only understand, but Jesus bore our pain on himself. He bore our humiliation on himself. He bore our ridicule on himself. And so what great to have Jesus as a king, as a Lord. And there are times in our life when we have been humiliated, when we have gone through pain, when we have been ridiculed, and we have that in our minds so fresh, and we are thinking, we are making plans how to avenge that. These men, they left it into the king's hand, and the king did the right thing for them. I'm encouraging all of us. Sometimes we are so bogged down by people. Why is this man always speaking behind my back? I'm telling you, they will always speak behind your back. Why is this person disliking me? I'm telling you, there will always be people who will dislike you. And God will send people who will dislike you. God sent Judas to betray Jesus. God sent King Saul to dislike David. And David had to survive that dislike. And it is because he survived that dislike that he was chosen to be on the throne as the next king. So there will be people. Why is this person always jealous of me? I'm telling you, there will be always people who will be jealous of you. And so don't worry about that. God knows your pain. God knows who's mistreating you. Leave it into God's hand. Give it into God's hand. He takes account of things. He sees you very closely. He knows everything what you're going through. Now, a very good story in Bible. Let me just tell that story to you. This story is of Mordecai and Haman in the book of Esther. Now, Mordecai is a good man. He does good. He loves God, and he's always thinking of serving God. But there is a man named Haman who hated Mordecai. Who disliked Mordecai. Mordecai was a Jew, so he would not bow down to Haman or any of his traditions. And so because of this, Haman hated him all the more. Now, Mordecai, Haman was constantly behind Mordecai to discredit him or to put him down or to show him low. But Mordecai was not upset with this. He understood this principle that he has a king. He has the God of universe who would take his case, and he is able to handle it better than what Mordecai could have done. And in the natural, Haman was in the royal palace. He was working for the king. He had the proximity to the king. He had a very influential and a prestigious position. And so, all the more, Mordecai could not do anything. But what happens in the story? One night, the king does not get sleep. So he asks his assistant to bring a book of the history of that place or history of that city. And so when he's reading the book, it happens that he reads about Mordecai, the mention of Mordecai in that book, and a good deed which Mordecai had done. So he was so impressed with Mordecai that the next morning he calls Haman and he asks Haman, "Hey Haman, what should we do with a person who has done a good deed or who has served the king with excellence?" So Haman was so self-centered. He was thinking that the king is talking about himself. So he played it real big. He said we should put a royal robe on him and have a big parade before him and parade him out and in of the city, up and down of the city, and shouting the good deed he has done or how great this man is. So the king says, "Oh, I love this. Haman, I like this great idea. Now you look for Mordecai, find Mordecai and do this for him. You march him on a parade up and down the city and you shout his praises." Wow. And this is our king. And Bible says he will lay a table before your enemies. So unless it will happen only if you rest the case in your king's hand. If you give it into God's hand, it is not easy. Every time we keep remembering that. Every time this man comes or this person comes before us, we remember every bad thing this person. I believe God is telling us to release it. Release it. Just cry before God and leave it, give it into his hand. He's able to handle it better than you. And sometimes when we hold on to it, then God leaves it. God says, then you handle. And then it doesn't turn out to be good. There is a story about catching monkey in Africa. The next slide, if you see the picture, how they catch monkey. They have a jar and the mouth of the jar is very narrow. So they put peanuts or banana into the jar, and the monkey comes and puts the hand into the jar to grab the peanuts or the banana. But when the monkey makes a fist, the hand cannot come out, and the hunter catches the monkey. Now, the monkey can escape if it just opens the hand and leaves the peanuts or leaves the banana. But the monkey does not realize. Monkey acts foolishly. Sometimes we behave like this monkey. We act foolishly. We hold on to those small peanuts, the small grudges, the small humiliation, or the small things which people have done to us. When we look at the cross, we see Jesus was humiliated to the core. And so we hold on to these peanuts, and then we are trapped by Satan. We are held in bondage forever by Satan. So can we just release them? Release them. And God is no man's debtor. When we see in the Bible, Peter gave his boat for Jesus to preach, and Jesus said, "Thank you, Peter, for this boat. Come next day as well. We will use your boat for preaching." Jesus said, after the preaching, he was tired, but he said, "Let's go for fishing." And he blesses Peter. That is our God. He is no man's debtor. Every good work you do is accounted in his book, and you will get the reward. You will get the reward. Your promotion is coming. Your vindication is coming. He never forgets what you have done for him. So I want to bless you this morning. And the next question, so the question we should ponder or we should reflect is, next slide. Have we missed out on leaving our pain, humiliation, and ridicule into our King's hand? So 4 things we pick up from this story, from this passage, is we are created for good work. So I'm encouraging us that wherever we leave, wherever we go, let us leave a trail of good works. And it will not happen in our normal course of routine. We'll have to think every morning and identify a person with whom we are going to do an act of kindness. And when we plan it out, it will really happen, whether it is with your wife or with your husband. The second thing is, misunderstanding kindness. We have misunderstood people, and it is time for us to say sorry or send a word of apology and say we want to improve our relationship. We are bound. And if we are misunderstood, it is time to give it into our King's hand. And the third thing we learn is practicing brotherhood and sisterhood. Make a covenant with each other. If you fall weak, I'll come to help you. And if I fall weak, you come to help me. And we will make a strong community together. We will build a strong church together. And the last thing is, leave it into your King's hand. Your King is a worthy King. He is a powerful King. He is a God who's so considerate, who's so compassionate, who knows every bit of me. And so why don't surrender to him? So let me just end here. And I want to thank you all for listening to me. And I believe that we will practice these things into our life.